Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode. And I'm absolutely thrilled today to have with me Ashley Phillips. Ashley, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for coming down and taking the time to visit with us today.
Thank you for inviting me, Tom. I really appreciate it.
Could you tell us about your academic and professional background?
Absolutely. So, I have a Bachelor of Business Management and Marketing from Tarleton State University in Stephenville. And graduated 2012. And since then, I've always had a balance between outreach, community outreach, and marketing. And just in the last 7 years, have I really gotten into development. But I think, it's all relationship based, and so it really lends itself to one another. Right out of college, I wasn't really sure the direction I needed to take, probably like most college graduates. I got a great job in sales in the medical industry and I hated it, and I hated living in the Metroplex. I moved to Fort Worth thinking I'm 24 and gonna live in an apartment on my own and have fun, and I took a really random municipal job in deep East Texas. I did code enforcement and I supervised adult probationers community service hour work. It was very random switch, but I was just making a very big switch. I had an interest in the outdoors and environment, so I was focused on the environmental code enforcement. This community supervision piece was kind of thrown on there after like an afterthought, and I really was not sure about that, and I put an emphasis on that detail because I view that as kind of a turning point in my career that sent me down this path and gave me the passion to be where I'm at today. It was an interlocal agreement between city and county, which is great, interesting. I had to answer to both city council and county commissioners. So that was a juggle, but I really appreciated the supervisor that I had at the time, a man named Ray Fleming, and I called him my Crockett dad because I was living in Crockett, Texas, in Houston County at the time, and it was just beautiful piney woods, but a large portion of poverty, and so there was a lot of illegal dumping, which was a focus of mine, and I would work with the probationers and supervise them to clean up and remediate some of this, as well as community service projects. And so he is the one that encouraged me to get involved in community groups. When I joined a garden club, I visited Rotary and Elks and Lions, and I just got highly involved in the community, and that's what really got me introduced in understanding and a passion for civic groups and involvement. And so I really appreciate his guidance and nudge and mentorship during that time. And where I was anxious about supervising adult probationers, driving a truck out all over a rural county with no cell service and tell them to pick up trash out of a ditch and paint a building and plant flowers. I think they blessed me more than I blessed them, and I learned a lot from that role, and I really appreciated it. Started and grew a nonprofit, a branch of Keep Texas Beautiful there in that community, and got some grants awarded and got a lot of projects going for that community, and it was a lot of fun, and I really feel like that is the seed that pushed me forward. Towards the end of that role, I met my husband. He lived just about an hour away in Nacogdoches, East Texas. So whenever I moved there to be close to him after he proposed, I went to work in the private sector for a big processing company, poultry processing, Pilgrim's Chicken, and I was their community outreach specialist. So I went from public to private, still kind of outreach, but shifted focus. And that was a great perspective to know the focus and the goals and the desires of the private sector and a high volume hiring organization and their desire for reputation in a community and their pocketbook to achieve it was fun to work with. So, what brought me to Kerrville was my husband's job. I had no desire to leave East Texas. I grew up in Odessa, the desert, and I found trees. So I really wanted to stay. It was beautiful out there. But he works in the medical field, and this area is just a much higher grossing territory for what he does.
Right.
So I was supportive and I said, "Honey, your call. It's whatever you choose." So I followed him out here and uprooted and started over again. And but while I was in Nacogdoches and at Pilgrims, um, a great organization that a lot of large corporations partner with for their benevolent giving that we did there was the United Way.
Right.
And that United Way location had a phenomenal leader that was a great friend of mine and a good mentor, and he is the one that advised me to join Rotary for the first time ever. Said, "I'm in Rotary, and for what you do, if you're gonna pursue community outreach, you need to network. It's all about networking. Your value is your network, and Rotary is a great opportunity at networking." Said, "Okay." So I did it, and I didn't really fully understand, but I loved the structure of that club and their onboarding process that was in place that really made you get to know Rotary overall, that club in particular, and its individual members, and so I really fell in love with it through that process. So when we moved out here, I knew, I said, "Babe, this is a small town. It's all about referrals and who the good jobs are not exactly posted, so I've gotta get out there and network." And my honey footed the bill for a minute for my Rotary dues, and I got to know some Rotary greats here, Miss Christy Vandenberg and Betty Vernon, and they just reached out and loved on me and introduced me and connected me, and I think kind of the rest is Kerrville history.
So, what year did you join Rotary? Was it Nacogdoches or was it in Crockett?
It was in Nacogdoches, so I just visited the clubs in Crockett, but did not gain membership until Nacogdoches. So I started up with the Nacogdoches Noon Rotary Club and meeting in the Bonita Creek Hall at lunch every week. And what year was that? It had to be 2015, I believe. I think 2015 or 2016. I need to go back and look. Honestly, I'm not sure.
So, what I was really intrigued when you started, I think it was early part of the podcast where you talked about relationships
Yeah.
and that what you do is either relationship building, relationship creation, relationship maintenance, or something else.
Yeah.
And even in your prior role, and of course in your current role
Yes.
professionally. And how does Rotary help with the relationship? You talked about the getting to know folks, getting your name in the community, meeting the people in the community. But Rotary to me is that, but
Mhm.
more
Mhm.
because I'm developing relationships
Mhm.
with members, even through this podcast. Um,
Yes.
so talk to us about the relationship part of it for you.
The relationship aspect of Rotary
Right.
started with that. Paul Harris and his friends, his colleagues, there was what, 4 of them,
Right.
and they were of all 4 of them were of different professions, and they would rotate through one another's offices for a lunch meeting, and they would just get to know one another and what's going on with their businesses, and they would always strive to help one another. If they needed legal services, they would use their friend, the lawyer. If they needed they would make a point to use one another first, and so that's the foundation of Rotary and our history and where we come from, and I attribute really my success here in this community to leads, you could call them, that came from Rotary. So before I came to Kerrville, I applied for a development position at a prominent establishment here in the community. And I was trying to apply ahead before we moved here to have a job lined up. And I drove all the way out and I interviewed and the interview went great, but they didn't believe me that I was really coming. They didn't believe that I was actually moving here. They weren't willing to place a bet on me. And so I told my husband, I said, I'm just gonna take the pressure off. I'm not gonna look for a job until we get there. We're gonna get moved, get settled, and then I'm gonna get in the community and then I'm gonna find the job because that's just how it goes. That's just how it is. It's all about who you know. We did that, and that was a blessing because moving is stressful. And I reached out through Facebook and to the Noon Rotary Club because I knew that I wanted to start with Rotary because of the value that it gave me in Nacogdoches and the connections and the projects that I was able to complete for what I needed out there. And she just told me everything that I needed to know through Facebook, and I showed up, and I asked for her by name, and she greeted me and said, "Oh, you must be Ashley," and immediately just took my arm and walked me around the room and introduced me to folks and said, "You need to meet and so, and they do this, and I mean, if you're in sales, if you're hiring or whatever you do, the difference of a warm lead versus a cold call. If you have a connection, if you have a relationship, if you have someone to say, Hey, you need a bricklayer? Well, this guy did a job for me and he did a great job, as opposed to me being a bricklayer and just sticking postcards on people's cars in a parking lot. I don't know you. I don't know the quality of your work, but if I know you did a good job for my neighbor, I'm going to call you and probably no one else. So that was huge to have her blessing and endorsement. And I mean, we call her the queen of Rotary, Christy Vandenberg. She's wonderful, and so she's been one of my first friends here in this community, and we call on one another frequently and support one another however we can, and it makes me feel good when I can help her. When I did not get that job that I tried to get before I moved out here, and that first day that I walked into Rotary and asked for Christy and she showed me around, I saw the person that interviewed me and chose someone else, and they said, "You're here." And I said, "Yes, I really yes, I really am moving here. I'm here." I cannot tell you, after I got to work my first job here in the community of development coordinator at the Hill Country Youth Ranch, I cannot tell you how many business professionals that we all know and love in this community came to me and said, "I regret not hiring you." "We didn't know." But I that gentleman, he said, "You're here." He said, "You need to sit right here." I said, "Okay." And he said, I've got a gentleman here with me that he needs someone exactly like you," because he was so impressed with me in the interview, but I mean, I could have been making it all up. He doesn't know. And so this was my first supervisor. His name was Tim Campbell, and he was the director of development at the youth ranch for a number of years. And I worked under him and learned a lot from him and the founder, Gary Prio there. And I did, so I sat right next between these 2 individuals, and Tim and I, we just talked and got to know one another, and because of that warm introduction, and because of his close colleague and friend saying, "You need to talk to this girl," I got the job, and it really made a big difference for me here.
Let me ask you a few more questions about Christy. I have learned so much hearing her story, listening to her talk about her public service, literally up to today.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to ask you, what's that like to have someone who's that passionate
Mm.
about public service as a mentor?
Big shoes to fill and a high mark to reach for. Iron sharpens iron. I love that scripture and that saying, that phrase. And I mean, Christy is, I do kind of idolize her. I don't know how she does all that she does. She's so involved and she does it with passion and quality. Before we went live on air, I was talking about being cautious of making commitments, that making sure that I can fulfill those commitments, that I can honor that commitment because whenever I look you in the eye and shake your hand, I will follow through. That's my word, and I want my word to have value. Well, Christy's word has absolute value and everything she does is impressive and is good, and her name becomes synonymous with those words, and so she does a lot of positive impact in this community. I love her primary focus is the organ donor organization that she works for, just trying to spread awareness and get everyone to sign up to be an organ donor, so that way we can shorten the list of folks in need, and all the fun ways that she gets creative to tell the tale, but also the Rotary missions of Pints for Polio and how I love how she revamped it this year, the Pints, Pies, Polio, Oh My, or something like that. It was really fun.
Pumpkins. Well, that really gets to the next question I wanted to ask you, which is what are two or three of the events you've either enjoyed participating in, working in, or just
Mm.
attending?
Oh, some of my favorites that I've worked in past are probably the trash pickup and the Josh the Otter literacy. Literacy is a focus of Rotary overall, and every club kind of has their own spin on it. And so, Josh the Otter is a water safety program that also promotes literacy. So, we get these books that have a song in it and coloring books, and we partner with the area elementary schools, and we go in and we present to primarily around second grade, but we'll also go down to first and up to third grade. It's toward the end of the school year before they break for summer, and they're gonna go out swimming and go to the river, and it promotes water safety and awareness, and there's a cute little baby otter toy that we sing and dance with and a song we play, and I love anything with kids, and I love that it encompasses in such a complete way, a multitude of beneficial, goals. So that's something that I've been highly involved in past. I always love litter abatement and environment and outdoors, so I love that we have adopted and committed to long term a 2-mile stretch of road where you
Go
said, "Do
Creek
you
Road.
go Creek Road," where you used to live, and we pick it up on a quarterly basis, and so thank you, Mayor Campana, for heading that up, and then but what I'm looking forward to is our one main event. That's what we call it, the main event. This is our annual fundraiser that has evolved over the years, and we've returned to like a Vegas gaming theme, and it's gonna be at the beautiful Comanche Trace. I just heard today that we're gonna occupy all 3 levels of the clubhouse, and it is a beautiful clubhouse. The food is excellent. The views are gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be Saturday, March 22nd. So it's gonna be right after the time change. So the lighting is gonna be, it's gonna stay light longer, so you'll get to enjoy that view for longer. So it's just gonna be a beautiful venue and experience and fun games, and so you're just gonna wanna come and hang out with all these amazing people because we have a lot of great people in our club, but it's for a wonderful cause, and I love that some years back, Rotary got strategic and considerate of donor fatigue and simplified their fundraising. I used to before I arrived, I was told that they had several smaller fundraising events, lots of different ones, and so they've kind of combined it, and I think that's very smart and strategic, and so just one big bang, and this is what they fundraise for to do all their local giving and outreach, their scholarships, their literacy, veterans, all of their local impact, which we have like 22 or 26 focus service impacts, and so it goes to a lot and it all stays local, and so I love that one.
You've answered this question previously, but I want you to answer it in terms of one question, one answer. By my calculation, you joined Rotary in your 20s.
Yes, sir.
Why should a young professional join Rotary?
Oh, well, I mean, it really is about network and connections. I enjoy Rotary in my weekly workflow as kind of a check. You need to be intentional in your daily life and not get lost in the monotony of things just kind of rolling over, and before you know it, you look up and you don't even know how you got to this room and where you're at, and you're just kind of going through the motions. And so being intentional about putting things in place at strategic opportunities to snap you out of your routine, get you away from devices and your typical grind, to forge new connections and looks an actual human being in the eye, that is extremely valuable and getting harder to make happen, I feel, in this day and age, and especially for young professionals. And so I think it's a beautiful bridge of generations because there's a variety of ages, gender, professions, everything. And you never know what you're gonna get out of Rotary. I've been amazed at the leads and the connections and the benefits that I've gotten just from being in Rotary. And so the connections and then but it is professional networking, so you can write it off as work. You can write it off as work, but it's a nice little unplug in your week.
Ashley, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time for this podcast, but I wanted to end by asking, was there anything else you wanted to add that I didn't ask you?
Oh, I don't know. We have fun. I love that this year's President Christie implemented that to our four-way test. And 5th, is it fun? We do have fun. I think my favorite I just told Christy Vandenberg earlier at today's meeting, my 2 favorite parts of the meeting right now are George's songs and then the wine giveaway there at the end, the wine description. It's so terrible, it's hilarious. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then please come be my guest at the Noon Rotary Club of Kerrville. There's Rotaries all over the world, and I love that we give back locally, but it's also really cool to think about how connected to something greater than ourselves we are. And if you happen to take an international trip, no matter where you go, do the research and see if you can find a Rotary Club in that area and visit their meeting and see how different it is there and the impact that they make over there. I really am looking forward to doing that now that my kids are getting bigger and I can start to travel abroad again. That's a goal of mine, and I would not have that goal if it were not for Rotary. So come see how we do it in Kerrville, and then take a nice trip and go see how different it can be elsewhere. It'll be
Well,
fun.
I wanted to thank you again, Ashley, for visiting with us, and I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Tom.